All right, guys. Welcome to Hertz Radio. It's your host, Charlie Giuliani. Hope you all had a great weekend. We're in for another week again already. Time's flying by. I don't know what's going on with the schizophrenic weather here, other than the boys at Harp. But it's so bizarre. It looked nice outside yesterday, nice and sunny, but the temperature was below freezing. It was crazy. If we had any precipitation yesterday, it definitely would have been snow. Just when you think you're in the clear, spring has sprung, winter's behind you. That's New England for you. I've actually seen blizzards in late April. One year, April 27th, we had a massive blizzard that just dumped out of nowhere. It was gone within a day or two, but a little over a foot. So you just never know what to expect in New England, with or without the boys and the toys at Harp. Anyway, interesting show lined up for you today. We've got actually two guests. In the first hour, we're going to be joined by a friend of mine locally here in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. He's worked with me in the past, or I've worked with him, however you want to look at it, in a group called the AZL, the Anti-Zionist League. The website is theazl.com. And recently he's had some unusual experiences. His name is Mike Collins. And so he's going to be sharing with us what's been going on. He's been getting some threats, as well as another person that we work with, Tony Mura, who's a World War II veteran. He was a fighter pilot. And actually he's had a whole lot of experiences through the years. A lot of things happened to him. I don't want to go into the details now. We'll be talking about that in the next hour. But just very strange stuff. And, this is par for the course. This is how it is when you stand up to the Zionist trash. You get threats, you have damage done to your property, on and on, you name it. You enter this Orwellian world, this Twilight Zone world of oppression and suppression and outright danger. So anyway, with no further ado, let me go ahead and introduce him. We've got a break coming up here in a moment or so, but let me at least welcome our guest, Fighting Mike Collins. How's it going, Mike?
How you doing, Charlie? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great to have you.
Yep, thanks.
I wish it was under better circumstances, however. Things have been going kind of crazy for you lately, huh?
Well, when the going gets rough, the tough get going, right?
Yeah, there you go. I guess we should start, maybe we should start a little bit with some background, building up to, the latest incident that you've been experiencing. We should talk probably a little bit about Tony Mura and some of the experiences that he's had over the years.
Well, the AZL.com is also named AnthonyMura.com. That's HMURA.com. Tony Mura is a World War II veteran who spent 60 years or so fighting the Zionist crime network. He ran for Congress. He ran for state rep in Massachusetts. He also was a confidant of John Kennedy when John Kennedy was a senator in Boston.
Yeah, he's brushed shoulders with some famous people. I'll tell you what, Mike, we got a break coming in, but we'll pick up there when we get back. Stick with us, folks. All right, folks. Welcome back to Hertz Radio. Your host, Charlie Giuliani. We're joined this first hour by a friend of mine, Mike Collins, from the AZL.com. That's the Anti-Zionist League, the AZL.com. Before the break, Mike, you were talking about the background of Tony Mura. Some of the things he's experienced. Of course, he was a World War II vet, fighter pilot. So, yeah, pick up from there.
Well, again, yeah, he's a World War II veteran. He was a gunner on a B-52 bomber over Germany, having fought the Nazis. But it's funny that ever since he came back from war, that useless war that was started by the Zionist bankers, the ADL and the Zionist powers have done nothing but give him trouble, despite his service to his country. And but he ran for Congress and he ran for state rep However, he ran into trouble. Even the mayor of Worcester told him that he was considered the most dangerous man in Massachusetts because he would tell the truth about the banking powers and the Zionist crime network and how we simply have to remove them before anything positive can get done politically. And what happened was they resisted him. He's had over 6 incidents of arson against his home and his businesses, and attempted murder against him with a steel beam. So he ran into a lot of opposition over his lifetime. But we chronicle Tony's 60 years of effort on the page, theazl.com, theaz.com. And we're here now to report that a very disgraceful thing. This is a very sharp comment on this country right now. At the age of 87, Anthony Mura has just been physically accosted and assaulted and threatened with death for his work very shortly after Mura, myself, and you, Charlie Giuliani, in unison with 9/11 researcher Christopher Bolin, exposed evidence, 9/11 evidence concerning Michael Goff. This is a person who a person from a high-level Freemasonic family who happens to also come from Worcester, Mass., where the Anti-Zionist League is based. Now, we did a show with Christopher Bolin. You were on there, right, Charlie? Remember that?
Oh, yeah, talking about PTAC.
That's right. So Michael Goff is, according to Bolin, the American connection between the Israeli military programmers and the crucial computer networks of the U.S. military. And on 9/11, there was a great confusion, remember, associated with NORAD and the FAA computer systems.
Right.
And this prevented the air from properly responding to the hijacked airplanes. Well, when we talk about that his company comes into it, PTEC. Michael Goff was more or less the Zionist entity working from the founding of PTEC. Shortly after, of course, the Arabs founded and financed it. Suddenly, on comes a man who Michael Goff leaves his law firm in Worcester, a good job there, and he starts working with a dodgy startup software company owned by Muslim Arabs. So how does that happen? Does that sound very likely, Charlie?
No. Here we go again, this same kind of modus operandi. You know, you got the people over in Iraq torturing, and they got Star of David tattoos on them, you know. Iraqis with Star of David tattoos.
Right, you have your Arab frontmen, an Arab cutout company, but behind the scenes you've got a Zionist running it.
Right.
PTEC was actually in control. They had their hands on 18 major federal agencies having to do with defense. That their software was there, and this was Israeli-run software. Guardium is the big company behind PTEC. It's an Israeli software company tied to Israeli military intelligence. And Christopher Bolin has said since Goff also works for Guardium. He started working for them after PTEC. But Bolin has made a very provocative statement here that he said, as long as if the law enforcement could only investigate Guardium and take this down to Guantanamo, they'll find out who's behind 9/11. So at any rate, it's very important that we've been honing in on Michael Goff from our own city of Worcester, Massachusetts. He does come from a high-level Jewish Freemasonry family, that is B'nai B'rith Freemasons. And so how did this Jewish lawyer from Worcester wind up running that Arab-owned, Arab-financed company? Why would he just leave his good job as a lawyer? He said he signed on he got that job through a temp agency. Something doesn't fit, right?
Yeah, and of course, they've got a long history of this. You know, the Mossad hijacked the Promised software back in the 80s. It was used for intelligence gathering. They stole the software from a small company right here in Massachusetts. And, sabotaged it from within and stole the guy's business away. He went belly up. He had to file bankruptcy. Whereas the Justice Department had contracted, several other government branches had contracted, and they just come in and stole it and were giving the software away or selling it to China. Or, they do this all the time, especially in the high-tech industry.
Yeah.
So it's nothing new for them.
Right. That's right. That promised software was actually a precedent which led to the P-Tech company and the technology that it utilizes.
Right.
In order to get loaded onto the most sensitive computer systems that failed so miserably on September 11th. But Mossad is all over Boston and MIT, Charlie, on 9/11. They're working at Hanscom. Guardian is at Hanscom Air Force Base with their software, and P-Tech is in Quincy, Mass. And you've got the Israeli-owned security running Logan Airport on 9/11. And so the whole Boston area and MIT is loaded with Israelis and Mossad.
Yeah.
But, the bottom line is something very disgraceful has happened, folks. You're going to want to know about this. Anthony Mura is 87 years old, and shortly after we went on to expose Michael Goff, the evidence pertaining that concerns him, and call for an investigation of Michael Goff, Anthony Mura was actually physically assaulted, as said. He was assaulted in Worcester, in the same town that Goff is from, and ice was thrown at him. I'm not sure, but I think he lost a tooth from it. He's not admitting it. I remember when the tooth was lost at the time, around the time of the incident. And he was told that they wanted to kill him. The person that accosted him said he wanted to kill him. And he also was able to name an acquaintance of Mura's who lives across the country. Somebody that has not lived in this area for over 10 years, and that the person, the assaulter, would never have any normal means. This is obviously indicating an intelligent person.
Right. I tell you what, Mike, we got to cut to another short break. Hold that thought, though. We'll pick up there when we get back.
Okay.
All right, guys. Welcome back to Hertz Radio. Again, our guest for this first hour is Mike Collins from the AZL.com. AZL is an Anti-Zionist League. And, before the break, Mike, you're talking about Tony Mura and some of the threats that have been made to him. If you want to pick up from there. By the way, I also wanted to mention, because we're kind of getting up to more modern times, but just to put this in perspective, some of the fights he's fought in the past, he's been fighting this battle for decades. His home is actually, he's lost several homes in this battle, hasn't he?
That's right. He was building a new house, and Tony, as we said, ran for Congress, and he ran for state rep. He was considered the most dangerous man in Massachusetts just for telling the truth, in that sense. But they burned his house and businesses down 6 times, at least 6 times, which the fire department itself considered to be, orchestrated arson. There was even an attempted murder on Tony. They tried to blow up his Polish club, his nightclub. And when he opened the door, there was gas pipes that had been designed to go in there to blow it up. He had to open all the windows up, or else he would have been blown sky high. And what happened was that same club eventually got burned down, and they left steel beams. They had taken the bolts out of the beams overnight, and when Tony took the beams, pulled them down, they fell on him. One of them fell on him. He almost got killed, so it was an attempted murder. So he's been through a lot of persecution for being open about the problem of the Zionist world bankers and their undue influence, how they own and control our politicians, even on the local level, as we can see now. They have, this octopus is powerful enough to show up. They pay so many people that somebody can show up and actually physically harass and assault Anthony Mura. They can bang and try to break his window as he's driving away, throw ice at him, throw snow into his car and said, "We're going to kill you," and then name someone, Tony's acquaintance across country, that they shouldn't really know the name of. Not only that, but one of the accomplishments Tony's had, we may as well go over some positive things here. He worked with John Kennedy when Kennedy was a senator in the late 50s, and Mira actually had an opportunity to advise Kennedy as a confidant on his understanding of the Federal Reserve. This helped lead to John Kennedy's attempt to end the Fed later on. That was remarkable. And what happened was John Kennedy was influenced by understanding the Zionist bankers. He would call Anthony Mura up to his office, Kennedy's Senate office in Boston in the late 50s, and send everyone out of the room so nobody could listen. And then he would question Tony, tap him for information for hours. When Tony would answer him, Kennedy would never give a comment because he didn't want to be quoted, but he learned a great deal from sessions with Tony in Boston prior to Kennedy's run for the presidency.
Yeah.
And, of course, we know the ramifications. Kennedy did try to end the Fed. He did under the system, at least the criminal powers behind it, and he had a standoff with Israel over the nuclear weapons. He tried to pull out of Vietnam, as we know, right, Charlie?
Sure. Oh, he did a lot of things that angered the elites. There was any number of reasons. He in the process of shutting down the CIA.
That's right, because they tried to, really put it to him during the Bay of Pigs thing. And I recently found out Jim Condit's page refers to the fact Kennedy once told somebody at a news luncheon that there was a nuclear bomb that the Russians had planted in the top floor of their embassy in Washington, and that they threatened throughout the entire Kennedy administration. They had him threatened that they would blow up Washington itself with everyone in it if Kennedy ever stepped off too far against the communist interests. So his decisions were made under quite a lot of pressure.
And, of course, Tony's been involved in this battle on many fronts. He actually got fluoride removed from Worcester water.
That's correct. Tony got fluoride removed from Worcester water. And we're going to bring up Worcester State Senator Harriet Chandler. She's a Michael Goff connection. Goff worked for her husband's law firm prior to his suspect job change over to P-Tech, the company that may well have been involved in 9/11. So it's a small world, but this same Harriet Chandler was the proponent of, she was the one pushing fluoride, and Tony was the opponent of fluoride. Tony helped back anti-fluoride candidates, and in the just after 2000, let's say 2003, 2004, Tony and other activists in Worcester were able to keep fluoride out of the water. There was a big artist in the American Free Press, and it's a rare victory because the enemy, Charlie, as you know, had $500,000. They put up $500,000 to push fluoride into the Worcester, Massachusetts water.
Right. But
Anthony Mura put up about $8,000, and with activists and volunteers was able to stop them. You know what it is, Charlie? When you inform the people, once they begin to wake up, these elite cannot handle the people.
That's why they go through so much effort to keep the public in the dark.
That's right. That's right. And we're working against them. And here's another incident. I guess they picked the wrong guy with me as well, Charlie, because, as you know, 3 days ago, somebody who claimed to be a Mossad killer in a parking lot said they were going to kill me if I don't stop what I was doing. They were going to put me more, to paraphrase, on a worldwide Zionist grid. Enter my name in order, the hit list, in other words. And he said he was a Mossad killer and proud of it. So he was in the parking lot. I recognized him, Charlie.
This was the second time you were... Right.
Yeah. Right. This is the second time I've dealt with him in a threat situation, because in October we had demonstrated with a sign. The sign said Israel did 9/11. Of course, we would explain, in conjunction with U.S. Zionists, certain U.S. Zionists. But he stopped his car and spoke with a man who was on a friendly basis with a man who assaulted me and vandalized my sign and said that I should be shot, that someone should have me shot. So this guy was being friendly in October to someone who threatened to have me shot. Now, the interesting thing in October, another detail, was that person who threatened to have me shot said that I was going to be characterized as a preacher of hate. And sure enough, within several days, Charlie, we could perceive online that our website had been changed over, probably through the ADL, onto a hate register list. How do you like that? How do you like the guy who threatened to shoot you managing to get you on a hate list, Charlie?
And nobody knows hate better than the Zionists themselves. But I tell you what, we got another break coming in, Mike, so hold that thought and pick up then we get back. Stick with us, folks. Okay, folks, we're back on Truth Hertz Radio. By the way, I mentioned on Thursday, when I talked about Columbine, that I'd be discussing Virginia Tech and the amazing parallels that went on with those fake CIA-orchestrated shootings. Well, I'll actually be getting to that either tomorrow or Thursday. I got a guest second hour tomorrow and then a guest on Wednesday. But sometime this week, so stay tuned. Anyway, coming back to our discussion with Mike Collins from the AZL.com, that's the Anti-Zionist League, the AZL.com. Yeah, Mike, you're mentioning your latest incident, a second time running into this who professes to be a Mossad agent, quite possibly so. What happened?
Well, I'll give a quick chronology of a timeline of how this happened. The incident itself was 3 days ago. This guy purported to be a Mossad killer and proud of it. And he said, basically, we're going to get your name on the Mossad network as a more or less hit list. If you don't stop, you're going to be killed. That's the message. To the point where I told him, you're not going to harm anyone. You're not going to harm anyone around me. And I put my body in front of his car. I wouldn't let him get away, and I called 911. I stood in front of his car, called 911, and there's a police report. They've already identified this guy, and now he's changing his tune, Charlie. Interesting. I want this said publicly. Now he's changing his tune and telling police that he works for a pro-Palestine organization and that we merely disagree on some finer points or something. I had met him, isn't that something? You can tell somebody in private that you're a Mossad killer and they better stop what they're going to do, but then an hour later, hours later, you're going to tell the cops that you're just a pro-Palestine guy who disagrees and had a little heated debate. There was no debate. It was a threat, and of course he accompanied and was very friendly with the guy in October who also threatened to shoot me while I held a sign. So here's a chronology of very relevant items here, folks. The bottom line is this. In November 2009, with Charlie, with yourself, Charlie Giuliani, the AZL Roundtable, our talk show, we were exposing Michael Goff from Worcester for his potential role on 9/11. Now, we had a talk with Christopher Bolin on this subject in early November. After that, and after calling on Worcester residents and law enforcement to help secure an investigation of Goff, I myself was 99%, I'm 99% certain of this, I myself was stalked by Michael Goff in late November. Now, during the same time period, just within days of our raising 9/11 evidence concerning Goff, all of a sudden, Charlie, do you remember this? A sudden rash of anti-Semitic vandalism in Worcester, Mass.
Classic.
Oh, yeah. Very sus timing, yeah. Impeccable timing, as you like to say. And wasn't Goff's, the state senator, Harriet Chandler, the Goff connections, wasn't she the most outspoken Zionist in terms of screaming about this anti-Semitic graffiti and pushing for the ADL's, control freak solutions, Charlie, where they kill free speech?
Oh, yeah.
And they always do this. After graffiti, they do this all across the country. The ADL shows up and pressures all the politicians to get up on a stage and say no place for hate. But what this really does is end free speech. It's designed to silence criticism of Israel, and to criminalize those who are exposing Zionist crime.
Classic
propaganda. But at any rate, so that's funny that the graffiti showed up during the same time period in which I am 99% certain I was stalked by Michael Goff, and both the graffiti and the Goff, this likely Goff stalking, occur just days after we began to call for Goff investigation in that same city. And shortly after that, what do we have? Anthony Mura gets physically assaulted. I say assault because not only was ice thrown at him, they attempted to break his window as he's driving away. They even named somebody across country that they shouldn't even know, an acquaintance of Tony's, which is a secondary threat. And he lost a tooth in that time period, and he doesn't want to discuss it, but I'm just letting the world know that. He had to get a tooth replaced. Maybe one of their ice balls hit him in the face, or maybe a fist did. But so we've had our threats, but these people are cowards, aren't they, Charlie? They work together like in a group mindset. They don't really have any individual will.
This guy, he's what, 90? How old is Tony now?
Tony is 87. I want you folks to know that. A World War II veteran, 87-year-old man, has just been assaulted by some likely Zionist agent trying to stop him from exposing 9/11 evidence, probably the evidence that concerns Michael Goff, the very person we were trying to discuss in the weeks prior to all this happening. So we've given you that more or less a timeline of, a long chain of abuses that proceed after we start exposing Michael Goff in his own hometown. But we don't just, go out there exposing. We don't sit online blogging all the time. We went right to the police, right to the mayor. If you go to theazl.com, that's THEAZL.com, you will see an open letter there to the police chief of Worcester. You'll see an open letter to the mayor of Worcester, and you'll also see something kind of unique. In the letter to the mayor of Worcester, there is a lot of information which puts Michael Goff in local context. Now, it's likely that Christopher Bolin is going to post information about Goff's local connections in the future. So you can see our 2 interviews with Christopher Bolin. You'll see links. The page for our talk show is the AZL Roundtable. But, we found that a lot of online sites, the larger ones, and some of the reporters that claim to be anti-Zionist are not backing up people who take actions out here. It's not a matter of negligence. I think that some of these guys out there, the bigger guys, are list makers, are fakes. And they are giving you good information, but whenever you take action, they're not going to back you up. They don't want real change. They're going to talk a big talk. But if you're in America and you start working locally, try this, folks. Find a Zionist, a likely Zionist criminal in your city and start exposing him. Better yet, start sending our open letter to the police chief and to the mayor, to your own city officials. to let them know that they can start by unraveling this suspect chain of hate graffiti in Worcester that surrounds our own efforts to deal with the Goff evidence.
Well, it's like the Tea Party.
Then they can scratch their heads, Charlie, because the state senator is actually connected to Goff, and she's the one most outspoken about the graffiti. So they can start, if they can get to the bottom of a local crime, being the graffiti, they can then, activists across the country can send this and open Pandora's box. Then we may secure an investigation of Goff. But that's what we're saying, Charlie.
Well, it's like the Tea Party movement, or, a lot of the war protest movements going back to the 60s. You had them infiltrated by high-level government agents, or very often they got funding from the Rockefeller Foundation or the Ford or the Carnegie Foundation. And it was fake opposition.
Yep.
They thought they were joining ranks with people who shared their concerns, but it was all to neutralize them and face them in the wrong direction. And so we see that going on a much larger scale today, more than ever.
What do we have out there for real activism? Well, let me tell you two high-profile sources, and both very apparent to me. It seems that they're fake. You've got We Are Change, run by Luke Radovsky and company. Luke Radovsky is related to the Chertoff who wrote the debunking article in Popular Mechanics against 9/11 conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, I tell you what, Dan, we got to cut for another break. We got one more segment when we get back, so stick with us, folks. We'll pick up there when we get back. All right, guys. Back to Hertz Radio. We got one final segment here with our guest, Mike Collins from the AZL.com. That's Anti-Zionist League, the AZL.com. Yeah, we were talking before the break about different groups and, how a lot of it seem like false opposition. My general rule of thumb is simply this. Don't rally behind a group or an individual. Sooner or later, you're going to get disappointed, whether or not they're actual shills.
Right.
My policy is always to rally behind the truth, rally behind what's right. You can't go wrong with that. Nobody can attack a principle or ethics. But anyways, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, what I would say is that people can ask themselves why these things don't occur with the high-profile groups out there that are pushing. They've got 1,000 posters to send you for free, but they're not talking about the Zionists. So, in other words, We Are Change. Luke Radovsky is connected to the Chertoff, who wrote the 9/11 debunking article in Popular Mechanics, the propaganda piece. So, what does that leave us with Radovsky and We Are Change? And they never talk about Zionists, not much at all. And then you have, on the other extreme, of course, you'll get ProThink talking about nothing but Zionists on 9/11, but he's going to make it look like he's anti-Zionist unless, like him, you become more and more of a white supremacist and a Nazi. See, this is a trick, both extremes, but neither one of these people has ever really been harassed. Mike Delaney of ProThink has actually said that to Brendan O'Connell on air, that he hasn't been harassed. But here's what in between, folks, this is what I recommend as an activist. People can do two small things and then one large thing. Let's start with the large thing. Christopher Bolin suggests this. Reach out to law enforcement and have them investigate Guardian. This is the second company that Michael Goff works for. The reason why is they can then get behind the major players on 9/11. And this is Bolin's quote. To the non-corrupted FBI and U.S. law enforcement agents, and I hope they're listening right now, if you take a close look at the individuals who are running Guardian and those behind the three of financing this outfit and interrogate them in Guantanamo for a few weeks, we will get to the bottom of who pulled off 9/11. I guarantee it. That's a quote from Christopher Bolin. Let me quickly give the three Israeli Mossad-connected companies from Hertz Radio, Israel, that do finance Guardian. They are Cedar Fund, Veritas Venture Partners, and Stage 1. They're all Mossad funding outfits. That's for the macro solution for the U.S. law enforcement. Now for the activists, what I just say is, number one, go to your police station or wherever you can. Tell them what you're doing, and just hold up the sign. Let people know that Israel had a huge role on 9/11. Hand out whatever CDs or flyers you can, but also see how you can help drive a wedge open in securing a Goff investigation, because you can show your local officials that in Worcester, Mass, likely, work locally, and this is another part of the local plan, is to have study groups. You can go to these other companies. We are distributing The Secret Empire. It's a study book, which you can run from the house, and you integrate the precinct strategy that congressional candidate Jim Condit is advocating.
Yeah, it's two books, very good read, very detailed. It goes into a lot of the history of how the Zionists have advertised everything on the planet. And I didn't lose you, did I? Well, isn't that interesting? Here we go again, folks. I don't know if Mike lost me or I lost him, one or the other. I don't even know if I'm still coming over the air. Wow, this is getting so predictable you can set your clock by it. Unbelievable. I don't even know if I'm even on the air. My. My apologies, folks, if you're still hearing me. I'm trying to rectify the situation here. Okay, I got the page unfrozen. I can still see that my guest is actually there, but I'm not hearing him. Unbelievable. Mike, can you hear me at all?
We called him earlier.
Okay, now I can hear
him on, but he, yeah. Sorry? We tried to get him on, but he's not able to get on. But he's gonna, folks, we've laid out the site. It's probably just gonna stay where it is with the action plan, but our opinion is this: we'd like to see if there are any anti-Zionist people in this country willing to take up study groups on the local level and start exposing things on a local level, including Michael Goff. And from there, you can work your way up. You can't come from the top down with an encyclopedia of knowledge, but no public action, unless the offline public is told about the Zionists behind 9/11, then we don't get a wedge. We can't wedge our way in. Right, yeah. Mike Kelly?
Absolutely. Sorry about that, Dan. Maybe you didn't realize it, but I had some really bad lag, and I wasn't coming in there for a moment. But, yeah, I mean, if our officials are so concerned about fighting foreign terrorist threats, these are the ones to...
Did they cut us off, Kelly?
What's that?
Did they cut off the last 10 minutes?
Oh, no. I think the problem was on my end for some reason, but, yeah, bandwidth is being squeezed, I guess, really bad right now. This is a prime time, for businesses starting up and whatnot. But, I guess we're okay. But anyway, yeah, in the last minute or so, we got a break coming in, and, that's going to end this segment, but, yeah, mention once again, we were talking about the 2-book series, Mike. Mention that again if people want to... Yeah, The Secret Empire. People can go look on the site, and it says, 2 World War II vets have an action plan to take back the country. And that is the Restore Self-Government Action Plan. And you'll see a link to the Secret Empire booklets. Tony Muir gave out 50 2-set volumes to the first 50 takers who wanted to start study groups across this country. Those have already been distributed. In fact, this is a dangerous volume because somehow... he's still not offering them?
We offer it. People contact us. They can get them. But the contact information for those books is on the site. Now, here's another thing. There's a site called fedupusa.wordpress.com, who's another great ally of ours. Noble Daddy is his moniker. And he has actually posted, and I'm going to give this for law enforcement, Michael Goff's information. And I asked about the legality of that, but actually I'm going to leave that for him to confirm that it's legal. But he is over there in the business at that website posting names, addresses, and phone numbers of all the potential criminals in our government. How do you like that, Charlie?
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me one bit.
What he's doing. And if he finds that it's legal and constructive for us to secure an investigation of Michael Goff, and if he finds that posting of address and phone number and information is legal and constructive for our purposes, then you will see it over at the website I just named, fedupusa.wordpress.com. So,
all right.
Charlie, have you on?
Thanks, Mike, for coming on and sharing your experience. I'll tell you, folks, this is what happens when you stand up for truth. If they're not coming after you, you're doing something wrong or you're fighting for the wrong side. Okay, we'll catch you later, Mike.
Yep.
We'll have you on again. You give us another update then. All right, folks, I got another guest coming up. Second hour. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a few. All right, guys. Welcome back to Hertz Radio. Your host, Charles Giuliani. Yeah, I thought I would have my friend Mike on to share his recent experience. I know he called me up Friday. He was pretty frantic. And this is, in fact, the second time he's had this bizarre encounter with this sleazy individual threatening his life. That's what happens. You stand up against these Zionist trash bags. I had a guest scheduled for the second hour. I'm not seeing him call in as yet, but then again, I'm not surprised because I wasn't able to get a hold of him to confirm the appearance on the show. I tried a couple times over the weekend. I kind of anticipated this was going to happen, but no problem. Got plenty of other things I can go off onto here. In fact, I'll probably start my discussion today. I say start because it's lengthy, and I'm sure I won't have enough time in just 1 hour to cover the whole thing, in which case I'll pick up tomorrow, first hour, got a guest second hour, providing he shows up. That's how it is when you do live radio. I've been doing it for years, and on average, you're lucky if 60% of the time your guests actually show up. Sometimes there are, legitimate reasons. Other times it's like God only knows what went on. I had one guy, Brad Friedman from bradblog.com, who's probably nothing short of a shill. But nevertheless, he had an interesting article on his website I wanted to discuss with him. I've interviewed him before. He didn't seem to have a problem. But the last time I was scheduled to have him on, I had recently done a show on Zionism, and apparently he went to my archives and saw it, wasn't impressed, and so he told the agent through whom I booked him that he wasn't going to come on my show because I'm, quote, too controversial. So that shows how concerned Mr. Friedman is about getting to the truth. Doesn't mind exposing, Muslims, but when it comes to exposing the Jewish Zionist crime syndicate, that's where he draws the line. So disgusting, folks. Whoever they are, wherever they are, whatever religious or ethnic background they have, it doesn't matter. If they're committing crimes, they need to be exposed. You don't selectively choose which crimes you want to expose and then call yourself a seeker after truth and justice. Give me a break. Anyway, these were, somebody emailed these to me the other day, some jokes about our sleazebag president there, Mr. Obama. This was a Jay Leno joke. He said, the liberals are asking us to give Obama time. We agree and think 25 to life would be appropriate. But interestingly, a lot of these people speaking against Obama, you didn't hear them saying a word about Bush. Well, Leno did, but, you know, a good many of them had no complaints about Bush, but here they are complaining about Obama. It's pretty disgusting, the hypocrisy, especially on Fox, you know. They'll complain about Obama left and right, but you never heard them say a word about Bush. Anyway, I'll go over a few more of these. Some of them are pretty funny. And then we'll launch into our discussion on the VA tech shootings. Another fraud, just like Columbine. Stick with us, guys. We'll be right back. All right, guys. Back to Truth Hertz Radio. Here's another joke from Leno. America needs Obamacare like Nancy Pelosi needs a Halloween mask. Yeah. Oh, you gotta love Pelosi, huh? Isn't she a charmer? Disgusting, disgraceful wretch. Well, America, you get what you put up with, I guess. This one's from Conan O'Brien, a question and answer joke. Have you heard about McDonald's new Obama value meal? Order anything you like, and the guy behind you has to pay for it. Well, that's what socialism is, isn't it, kids? And that's what we have. You see, this is what we get with the phony left-right paradigm swing, little swing game. We go from fascism to socialism. So take your pick. Which form of tyranny and totalitarianism do you prefer? If you like fascism, well, we'll give you that under the next Republican administration. If you like socialism/communism, well, just sit patient, and when the next rigged election brings you a Democrat, you'll get that. Either way, you're going to have tyranny and totalitarianism. Just grin and bear it. Enjoy it. Unbelievable. Anyway, here's another one from Leno. What does Barack Obama call lunch with a convicted felon? A fundraiser. Anyway. Here's one from Letterman again. What's the difference between Obama's cabinet and a penitentiary? One is filled with tax evaders, blackmailers, and threats to society. The other is for housing prisoners. Yeah, there you go. Tax evaders, blackmailers, and threats to society. Well, you know, the same thing could certainly have been said about the Bush administration. Anyway, here's one from Fallon. I'm not even sure who that is. I don't really watch late night TV anymore. I don't know if this is from Comedy Central, but anyway. If Nancy Pelosi and Obama were on a boat in the middle of the ocean and it started to sink, who would be saved? The answer is America. This one's from Kimmel. Again, I don't even know who that is. What's the difference between Obama and his dog, Bo? Bo has papers. And then one last one from Letterman. What was the most positive result of the Cash for Clunkers program? Answer, it took 95% of Obama bumper stickers off the road. All right. That's enough of that. Okay, guys, let's launch into a discussion of Virginia Tech. You're going to see some striking parallels if you listened in on last Thursday's show. If you didn't, go in later and check the archives, oraclebroadcasting.com. You might want to listen to those two shows together, side by side. It's absolutely incredible. What we have been told about both of these incidents doesn't even come close to the truth. The only truth we were told is that there were shootings at both of these schools. Other than that, everything has been bunk. Everything has been a lie. In the case of Columbine, we were told that there were only two shooters, Klebold and Harris. But as I brought out last week, that wasn't the case at all. There were at least half a dozen other known shooters that were actually named in the sworn affidavits by, students and teachers, eyewitnesses on the scene. They named some of these other perpetrators. And yet, when their affidavits were released publicly, the names were redacted. They were blacked out. It's astonishing, the level of lies. You have the judge there in Denver sealing up documents pertaining to Columbine for 20 years, None of the parents in Colorado, in the Littleton area, are happy with the results of the so-called investigation. This is classic. This is what we get every time in instances like this. And then, of course, after, every school shooting, there's always been a push for more stringent gun control laws. There's your Hegelian dialectic. They create the problem, then they come along with a solution that you otherwise wouldn't accept, except for the crisis that they created. Anyway, the Virginia Tech massacre was another school shooting that took place on Monday, April 16th, 2007. That's an interesting date, by the way. This is a Zionist holiday that occurs around that time. It floats between the 16th, the 19th, the 20th. I'm sure that year it was probably on the 16th. Always in the later part of April, though. You had Waco, you had Ruby Ridge, you had, at least the Ruby Ridge incident began in late April. You had the Oklahoma City bombing, and now, of course, the Virginia Tech shootings. You also had the Columbine shootings. Columbine was on the 20th of April, whereas it was the 19th of April for Waco and the Oklahoma City bombing. Anyway, here it is, April 16th of 2007, on the campus of Virginia Polytech Institute and State University in Blacksburg, Virginia, otherwise known as VA Tech, Virginia Tech. In two separate attacks, approximately 2 hours apart. Now think about that. That alone, right away, should tell you something. Two separate attacks, 2 hours apart. How was he able to go on this second shooting spree 2 hours later? And a much bigger shooting spree at that. The second one was far more elaborate. Unfortunately, far more people died in that one. How was he able to do this? Why wasn't that campus swarming with police? Anyway, we're told that there were two separate attacks 2 hours apart, and we're told that the perpetrator was Sung Hui Cho, who killed a total of 32 people and wounded many others before committing suicide. Or so we're told. Well, we were told that about Klebold and Harris, too. But the wounds are not consistent with those, shot at close range, as always. Klebold's autopsy report is not available. Probably never will be made available. If it ever is, it'll be blacked out. They're hiding something there, folks. And so it is with Cho. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll cover that later, either today or, when I do part two of this, probably tomorrow. But we're not dealing with suicide on the part of Cho. Let me just tell you right now, it was not a suicide, and I'll explain why later. Anyway, the massacre is the deadliest peacetime shooting incident by a single gunman in United States history on or off a school campus. Cho, a senior English major at Virginia Tech, had previously been diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder. And so here comes another break. Stick with us. I'll pick up then when we get back, folks. Okay, folks, welcome back. Talking about Cho, the alleged perpetrator of the Virginia Tech shootings in April of 2007, April 16th. I say alleged because, as always with events like this, the official story doesn't jive with the evidence. As was the case, again, with the Columbine shootings. Klebold and Harris, though they did take part in the shootings, they were set up as the patsies in the sense that it was made out to look like they were the sole perpetrators of the attacks. And as I demonstrated Thursday, that was not the case. There were many others involved. They were just set up to take the fall for the whole thing. And so it is with Cho. Cho may or may not have been one of the shooters, I don't know. But he certainly was not the sole perpetrator of it. I believe that he might not have shot any of the bullets and was simply set up as the patsy who did the whole thing. But again, I'll get to that later, the proof of that. During much of his middle school and high school years, Cho had received therapy and special education support. You see, he was the perfect person to set up for this type of crime. He had a history of psychiatric problems. Who's not going to believe that a psychiatric patient is capable of doing something like this, right? After graduating from high school, he enrolled at Virginia Tech. Due to federal privacy laws, Virginia Tech was not informed of Cho's previous diagnosis or the accommodations that he had been granted in his earlier schooling. In 2005, Cho was accused of stalking 2 female students. Again, notice he has a history of psychiatric problems. The perfect person to set up as a patsy. I'm not denying he had the mentality to do something like this, but once again, folks, the evidence doesn't jive. I'm simply stating that he had the classic background that a psyops operation would target for, the person they would pin these crimes on. This is what happened with Oswald, when they set him up to take the fall for Kennedy. They didn't have too much on him personally, but they set him up. They got some Oswald lookalikes. We know they were Oswald lookalikes because one of them was said to be over 6 feet tall. And some of the places he was said to have been seen at, he was actually seen at 2 different places at the same time. Once at a shooting gallery and another time in Mexico City. Obviously they had several lookalikes. And so they would set him up to make it look, so some of the eyewitnesses later could come forward and say, and they did. They came forward and said, "Oh yeah, I'm not surprised he shot Kennedy. I saw him at a shooting range, firing at a target, saying, 'Die, Kennedy, you wretch, die.'" This is what they do. Anyway, after an investigation, a Virginia special justice had declared Cho mentally ill and ordered him to undergo treatment. This is going years back after 2005 when he was caught stalking 2 female students. So we can see that, he had the perfect profile for a patsy for this type of thing. Lucinda Roy, a professor and former chairperson of the English department, had also asked Cho to seek counseling in the past. The attacks received international media coverage and drew widespread criticism of U.S. laws and culture. Pointing fingers here and there, blaming this, blaming that. But, of course, the media, as always, never asked key questions. Like, for example, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but how come they didn't ask how Cho could have committed suicide when there was 1 bullet wound in the back of his head and 2 in his chest? Did you know that, boys and girls? The alleged perpetrator of the Virginia Tech shootings had 3 bullet wounds. So you got to ask yourself, what did he do first? Did he shoot himself twice in the chest first, and then once in the head? Or once in the head and twice in the chest? Or maybe he shot himself once in the chest, then in the head, then came back and shot himself in the chest again. I guess he enjoyed it and wanted to make sure he was dead. And by the way, when you shoot yourself in the head, almost never do you ever hear of anybody shooting themselves in the back of the head. As a matter of fact, I don't know of any instance where that has occurred. It's always in the side or, in the mouth or right in the forehead, but it's never in the back of the head. In fact, it's very awkward to shoot yourself, to bend your arm around and aim for the back of your head. It's just not very likely at all. But again, given the fact that he shot himself once in the head and twice in the chest, we're supposed to believe that's a suicide. Unbelievable. I don't buy it, folks. Anyway, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll mention this later in my notes, but interestingly enough, most of the victims that Cho was said to have shot were shot 3 times. And here's Cho himself shot 3 times. Anyway, it sparked intense debate, the Virginia Tech shootings. about gun violence, gun laws, gaps in the U.S. justice system for, or the U.S. Treatment in general, for treating mental health issues. The perpetrator's state of mind, the responsibility of college administrations, privacy laws, journalism ethics, on and on and on. But again, diverting attention away from real issues. The massacre prompted the state of Virginia to close legal loopholes that had previously allowed Cho to purchase handguns without detection by the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Again, all about, more laws controlling your ability to purchase handguns and ammunition, whatever. More about taking away your Second Amendment rights. That's all this was about. That's all these things are ever about. It also led to the passage of the first major federal gun control measure in more than 13 years. There you go. There's your motive. The law strengthening the, this gun control measure was signed by Bush on January 5th of 2008. And that, my friend, is the real reason why this shooting took place. It's all about more stringent gun control laws being passed. They want you totally disarmed, so when they introduce their tyrannical world system of government, and we're not far away from it, you will be absolutely powerless to stop them, to fight and win back your freedoms. That's exactly what they have always wanted. And so here it comes. Here it comes, kids. Interestingly, the claim that gun control laws weren't strict enough to have prevented this disaster could not have been more wrong. Many students complained that if they had been allowed to carry their guns on campus, they could easily have apprehended Cho before he went on his shooting spree. This is what they tell us after these shootings occur. Oh, we need more gun control laws, If we had these gun control laws in place, things like this wouldn't have happened. But the reality is, all the students were saying it. If they had their guns, they weren't allowed. A campus rule prevented students from carrying guns onto campus, or even having them in their cars, for crying out loud. Students said if they had their guns. Oh, I guess you can have them in the car, but you can't have them on campus. But if they had their guns, they could have stopped it. All right, guys, short break. Be right back. Okay, folks. Back on Hertz Radio. Virginia, the state of Virginia, folks, is a concealed carry state, and yet Virginia Tech campus had recently, just prior to the shootings, had enforced a policy prohibiting unauthorized possession, storage, or control of firearms on campus. You'd have to wonder, was this policy adopted to make the shooting spree go more smoothly for Cho or whoever else was behind it? But let's look at the attacks in some detail here. We're told that Cho used 2 firearms during the attacks. A .22 caliber Walther P22 semi-automatic handgun and a 9mm semi-automatic Glock 19 handgun. The shootings occurred in separate incidents, as I mentioned, 2 separate incidents, with the first at West Ambler Johnston Hall and the second at Norris Hall. So let's look at the first one, West Ambler Johnston Hall shootings. Cho was seen near the entrance to West Ambler Johnston, which is a co-ed residence hall that houses 894 students, or housed at that time anyway, this is about 6:45 a.m. Eastern Time. The hall was normally only accessible to its residents via a magnetic key card before 10 a.m. Cho's student mailbox was in the lobby of the building, so he had a pass card access after 7:30 a.m., but it is unclear how he gained early entrance to the building. Cho shot his first victims around 7:15 a.m. in West Ambler. At about that time, Cho entered the room that freshman Emily Hilscher shared with another student. Hilscher, a 19-year-old from Woodville, Rappahannock County, Virginia, was killed in this shooting. After hearing the gunshots, a male resident assistant, Ryan Clark, attempted to aid Hilscher. Clark, a 22-year-old senior from Martinez, Columbia County, Georgia, was himself fatally shot in the process. Hilscher survived for another 3 hours, but no Virginia Tech official, police, or hospital representative attempted to contact her family until after her death. Really strange goings-on here. Cho left the scene and returned to his dormitory room. While police and emergency medical service units were responding to the shootings in the dorm next door, Cho changed out of his blood-stained clothes, logged onto his computer to delete his email, and then removed the hard drive. Again, so we're told. About an hour after the attack, Cho was believed to be seen near the campus duck pond. Although authorities suspected Cho had thrown his hard drive and cell phone into the water, a search was unsuccessful in finding them. This is just part of the little urban legend that has grown around this story. Almost 2 hours after the first killings, Cho appeared at a nearby post office and mailed a package of writings and video recordings to NBC News. The package was postmarked 9:01 a.m. He then walked to Norris Hall. In a backpack, he carried several chains, locks, a hammer, a knife, 2 guns, 19 10 and 50 round magazines, and almost 400 rounds of ammunition. So now let's look at the second shooting spree. And again, how this was even possible. How he was able to pull this second spree off after the first shooting had taken place, you know, killing so many more people. It's just mind-boggling. And how there was no response. Don't forget, the same thing at Columbine, guys. There were supposedly only 2 shooters. We now know, of course, that's not true. There were many more. But nevertheless, according to the official story, how can they still sell this to people? It's obviously a lie that there were only 2 shooters, and yet they couldn't get, you know, the school under control with only 2 shooters. Supposedly they were sending SWAT teams in there, but nobody was doing anything. And when asked, the SWAT team said we were outgunned, outnumbered. Well, that's probably true. But again, according to the official story, there were only 2 shooters, you know. Oh, boy. Anyway, Norris Hall. About 2 hours after the initial shooting, as I had stated, Cho entered Norris Hall, which houses the engineering, science, and mechanics program, among others. And he chained the 3 main entrance doors shut. So we're told, again, who knows if Cho himself did it? We'll probably never know, but this is how the official story goes. He then placed a note on at least one of the chain doors, claiming that attempts to open the doors would cause a bomb to explode. Shortly after the shooting began, a faculty member found the note and took it to the building's 3rd floor to notify the school's administration. At about the same time, Cho had begun shooting students and faculty on the 2nd floor, and the bomb threat, of course, that he made in the note that he'd strapped to the doors, for some reason, was never called in. Within 1 or 2 minutes of the first shooting, the first 911 call was received. According to several students, before the shooting began, Cho looked into several classrooms, apparently scoping them out, Or maybe he was just following orders, so it would look official like he was the perpetrator. Who knows? Anyway, Aaron Schumann, an eyewitness and survivor who had been in room 207, told reporters that the shooter, quote, peeked in twice earlier in the lesson, and that it was strange that someone at this point in the semester would be lost looking for a class. He looked rather disoriented. Anyway, Cho's first attack after entering Norris Hall occurred in an advanced hydrology engineering class taught by Professor G.V. Loganathan in room 206. Cho first shot and killed the professor, then continued shooting, killing 9 of the 13 students in the room and injuring 2 others. Next, Cho went across the hall to room 207, in which instructor Christopher James Bishop was teaching German. We're told that Cho killed Bishop and 4 students, and that 6 students were also wounded in this particular classroom shooting. Cho then moved on to Norris 211 and 204. In both of these classrooms, Cho was initially prevented from entering the room by barricades erected by instructors and students. In room 204, Professor Liviu Librescu, a Holocaust survivor, we're told, forcibly prevented Cho from entering the room. That may be true, it may not be that he's a Holocaust survivor, but nevertheless, notice how they got to get that hero story in there. A hero from the Holocaust. God, whatever. Anyway, Librescu was able to hold the door closed until most of his students escaped through the windows, but he died after being shot multiple times through the door. So, they always got to get that in there. A hero story about a Holocaust victim. Oh, knock it off. Anyway, 1 student in his classroom was killed. Instructor Jocelyn Nowick and student Henry Lee were killed in room 211 as they attempted to barricade the door. Cho, we're told, had reloaded and revisited several of the classrooms. After Cho's first visit to room 207, several students had barricaded the door and had begun tending to the wounded. And we'll pick up there with the official story when we get back, and then we'll do an analysis on this, and you'll see how it couldn't play it out this way. All right, guys, stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, guys. I guess this is our final segment, so I'll see how much I can squeeze in this last 10 minutes or so, and then I'll pick up tomorrow from here. First hour, second hour I got a guest. What's his name? William Pepper. He was Sir Hans lawyer, now pushing, along with a guest I had last week, for the prosecution of Bush and company for their crimes during the Bush administration. Should be an interesting discussion. He's seeking that lawsuit from Spain. So we'll see how that's going, get an update on that. Anyway, back in room 206, the shooting spree that went on there, we had 1 student, Waleed Shailen. We're told that he distracted Cho from a nearby student because of some movements he made, as a result of him being wounded. Caught Cho's attention. Cho turned around and finished him off, unfortunately shot him dead, but apparently that act saved another student that he seemed to be aiming his gun at the time. That student managed to get away while he was shooting Shailen. Also in room 206 was Partahi Mumora Holomon Lumbentoren. Oh boy, can't pronounce these names. We're told that he may have protected fellow student Guillermo Coleman by diving on top of him. Coleman's various accounts, however, make it unclear whether this act was intentional or involuntary as a result of being shot. Anyway, multiple gunshots killed Lou Ben Toren, but Coleman was protected by him, by his body when Cho opened fire. Assuming that this account is actually true, again, I don't buy this whole thing. Yeah, these students were shot, but was it by Cho? I'll get to reasons why I don't think that's true later. Anyway, students, including Zach Petkowitz, barricaded the door of room 205 with a large table after substitute professor Hanjun Cheng and a student saw Cho heading toward them. Cho shot several times through the door, but failed to force his way in. No one in that classroom was wounded or killed, fortunately. Hearing the commotion on the floor below, Professor Kevin Granada brought 20 students from a nearby classroom into an office where the door could be locked on a third floor of Norris Hall. He then went downstairs to investigate and was fatally shot by Cho. None of the students locked in Granada's office were injured, fortunately. Approximately 10 to 12 minutes after the attack began, we're told that Cho shot himself in the head, and of course, twice in the chest. And don't forget, the wound in the head was in the back. During this second assault, he had fired at least 174 rounds, killing 30 people and wounding 17 more. During the investigation, State Police Superintendent William Flaherty told the state panel that police found 203 live rounds in Norris Hall. He was well prepared to continue, Flaherty testified. During the two attacks, Cho killed a total of 5 faculty members and 27 students before, again, committing suicide, as we've been told. The Virginia Tech Review Panel reported that Cho's gunshots wounded 17 other people. 6 more were injured when they jumped from second-story windows to escape. Sidney J. Vale, the director of the Drama Center at Carolyn Roanoke Memorial Hospital, said that Cho's choice of 9mm hollow point ammunition increased the severity of the injuries. But did Cho choose these type of bullets? That's the question. Everything indicates, folks, that this was a professional shooter, and Cho certainly was not that. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll cover that later in the notes. But the question is, how could Cho have pulled off all of this? 2 killing sprees at that, without law enforcement swarming the school and apprehending the assailant? That's the real question. How did this go on? This shooting spree spanned several hours, just like the Columbine shooting. Several hours had gone by. Nothing. No help, was forthcoming. I mentioned a guy walking around outside wearing a 3-piece suit and a tie and sunglasses, touting a clipboard, and walking around taking notes. The whole time the shootings were going on. There was a brown pickup truck, if you recall, that I mentioned, that was driving around out in the parking lot, making a loud rumbling sound like the muffler was gone. The whole time the shootings were going on, it was circling around outside. What was up with that? The parallels here, you can't miss them. It's absolutely striking. The shootings going on for a long time, the inconsistencies with eyewitness testimonies as compared to the official story, evidence that we're not dealing with suicide by the perpetrators. Klebold's body, the autopsy of his body was never released, obviously never will be. Documents pertaining to the case sealed up for 20 years. We got the same thing here with the Virginia Tech incident. Family members of, the victims have been coming forward saying, we want another investigation. This thing stinks to high heaven. Cover-up activities, inconsistencies in the claims. I've already mentioned some of the problems, and I'll cover that again tomorrow when I do part 2 of this, but there's problems with the claim of Cho committing suicide, the inconsistency with the bullet wounds. Not what you would expect from someone who commits suicide. And by the way, when you're shot at a close range, or when you shoot yourself, I should say, at close range, the bullet exiting out the other side of the head creates a massive gaping wound. Yet, you don't find that here. The wound is not consistent, in other words, with someone shot through the head at close range. It's more consistent with someone being shot from a distance. But as I said, that doesn't even matter. When you're dealing with 3 bullet wounds, 2 in the chest and 1 in the head, can you honestly say that's suicide? It's like Gary Webb. 2 bullet wounds in the head. How can that be suicide? But once again, let me point out, Cho was shot in the back of the head, folks. Extremely unlikely that when you shoot yourself, take your own life, you're going to shoot yourself in the back of the head. I mean, just try it right now. Bring your, whether you're right-handed, left-handed, whatever, bring your hand behind your head and imagine yourself holding a gun, pointing a trigger. It's very awkward. Very, very awkward. You really got to be a contortionist to do it. You're just not going to do that. You're going to find the most easy and convenient position to point that gun, which of course would be to the side of your head or to the front, the forehead, or, in your mouth, whatever. Those are the 3, obvious and most common places that someone shoots themselves when they shoot themselves in the head. Sometimes, people might shoot themselves in the heart, but it's much quicker, easier, painless to shoot yourself in the head, and you're going to do so either, again, in the front, the side, or the mouth, never behind the head. So, we're dealing here with another cover-up, another frame-up. And they don't care how clumsy it looks because they know most people are going to buy it, just like with 9/11. They don't care how clumsy they were, and they were very clumsy. Some people have called the 9/11 attacks, a masterpiece of deception on the part of the government. It was no such thing. It's only a masterpiece for the dumb masses that don't look into things, don't look under the rug to see what those lumps are under there. But for those who do, can clearly see it was a clumsy, sloppy job, as always. They always leave a trail of popcorn trailing, 100 miles behind them. It was a very sloppy job, very clumsy. A lot of mistakes they made, a lot of telltale signs, with government fingerprints on them. So here it is again with Columbine and with the Virginia Tech shootings. No question about it, guys. Another government job pushing for more gun control rights. The loss of our gun ownership rights, more gun control laws. That's all it is. That's all it's ever about. Anyways, I'll pick up with part 2 of that tomorrow, the first half, and the second half. I'll bring on our guest, William Pepper. You don't want to miss it, folks. Have a good day. We'll see you then.